Yeah, it's going. Yeah. Just
Good
go ahead.
morning.
Good morning.
I didn't hear you.
Good morning.
Bring that energy up. This afternoon, I'm going to do a class on the sacredness of your soul. And I don't care how long you work with spiritualism and how long you know your connections. It is always a good time to be reminded of the sacredness of your soul. You know, it's an interesting element because you're born into a human body. You're married to a family and you take on the denseness of whatever they're carrying when you're born. Now, it's a fact that they know that if you take an elephant, one of the most powerful animals on this planet, family-oriented, family-directed, they grieve just like we do. And yet, if they put a chain on an infant elephant's foot, by the time that elephant becomes an adult, they can put a piece of yarn on that elephant, and that elephant will be held still by that. It will not break a piece of yarn because it is bought into a system that says I can't. A system that took its power away from them and told that elephant it was less than. And that elephant believes it. The elephant believes that. We have a science that tells us that we have a conscious, subconscious, and a superconscious mind. And one of the things I've learned working with people as long as I have, most people go from their conscious down to their subconscious mind. Now, your subconscious mind, I personally believe, is your Akashic record of this life. They know that if they put you under hypnosis, that you will remember even a license plate you saw in flashing by you. There's nothing that you ever forget if it's in that subconscious mind. But it also runs a scenario, a picture of what you bought into about yourself. Are you held by chains? Are you held by a piece of yarn? So talking about the sacredness of your soul, the sacredness of that soul, means that they have what they call a superconscious mind. Now, science calls it that because of the fact that science knows that you know things, and there's no logical reason. They can't explain why you know them. And so they refer to it as your superconscious mind. I refer it to as your God mind. Now, in the New Testament, it said the kingdom of God lies within you. Not outside, not somewhere else, not somewhere you have to strive to become. It's inside of you. But you took chains when you were born. They know scientifically that your brain waves are in a meditative state. And that's why children and animals see spirit. Is because they are in a meditative state until a portion of your brain called moral reasoning takes place. Most people do not understand that a child actually legally could not lie before the age of 7, 8 years old. They legally could not lie. Because until you have moral reasoning, you don't have the tools to decipher one versus the other. And the truth is, how many of you, being the mavericks, because usually if you're drawn to this religion, it's because there's a maverick inside of you. There's a part of you that knows the system sucks. That you walked into this world and you looked around and you said, there's something wrong here. And ultimately, that till more reasoning takes place, you don't incorporate fully into this world. And so I always say, from birth to 7, you can tell a child anything. The problem arrives, and I know you know in your own families this is true. Every family has a scapegoat. Every family has one. I was the black sheep of the family. I tried really hard not to get in anybody's way, and I was always blamed whenever things went because they knew I was the most outspoken of all of them. Because I called a spade a spade. I said things when people weren't listening. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was speaking my truth at that point. How many of you did that? But there comes a point where speaking your truth, guilt and shame gets taken over. Because I guarantee you, the family member that had the most imagination, the greatest abilities, got called liars before they had the ability to be one. And so when moral reasoning took in, you go, oh, they must be telling me who I am, so you take that on as truth. You take that on as being who you are. And so each member of the family learns you either let yourself be the scapegoat or you sit back and you keep your mouth shut and just try to stay out of everybody's way. I always like to say most people that I encounter live this life 2 ways. The not yet God syndrome or the okay God syndrome. The not yet God syndrome says, well, I want this, but I don't know if I've earned it yet. I don't know if I punished myself enough yet. I don't know if I've taken on enough guilt and shame in order for me to deserve it. The other one is, okay, God, what do I have to do? Where do I have to be so I can get out of here? Only problem is everybody keeps cementing that into this world, and that's not what this world was designed for. You have an agreement when you come in to the denseness that you were born into. There is an agreement there. And from everything I've learned with my guides and my teachers, and the earliest I remember them, I was 3 years old. I was 3 years old the first time. Not deceased people who'd been in this world and left, but actual angels and guides, 3 years old. So I always say I was raised by spirit, not my parents. And I'm grateful that I had that, but not everybody does. It doesn't make me more special than you. It doesn't make me better than you. It just means that I came in here to walk through the denseness of a world and not let the God self, my sacred soul, lose its image, lose its perspective. Now that doesn't mean that I don't have an earth body and an earth mind too. Ask Joe.
Pretty good story.
But he won't tell.
Not like to hear.
Bless his heart. But the thing is that we have to know it's not that we ask for too much. It's that we ask for too little and then expect less. What we believe, we achieve. What we hate, we'll create. What we fear, we'll draw near. It's a simple way to say it to yourself. Now we're living in a world right now that all they're doing is trying to make you afraid. That's all they're trying to do, make you afraid of everything. And whenever anybody asks me, I said, if God wants me, I'll go. I got no problem. I got work to do here. I'm going to be staying here for a long time. I'm not worried. Because whatever I have to go through, I know I'll make it through. We walked through 2 months of Joe being in ICU. And to this day, his doctors call him a miracle. His doctors call him a miracle. If you just remember, by the grace of God, go I. I like to bring everything into sayings because it's easy to remember. Say what you mean, don't be mean when you say it. Those are good rules to go by. But I find that people bring their pain out and they're not in their sacred self. When you don't feel blessed to be a child of God, when you don't remember who you really are and what you're really made of. So our class is going to examine, do you have a chain on your leg? Or do you have a thread? What is the system that you're buying into? And we have 7 levels of each one bringing us closer to our divine self. But we need all of them to operate in this world. And it doesn't mean that I have to go visit crystal caves. It doesn't mean that Mother Mary and Jesus and Kuan Yin and the archangels of everywhere are going to follow me around and make sure I'm okay. I say this all the time. People act like this. I got an electric bill. I have a problem. So I go to the electric company, and the person who's trained to help me is standing right there. And I say to them, oh no, you're not good enough. I want the head, the CFO of this company to come down and personally take care of this. They're going to look at me like I got 2 heads. You got a big job. They have a big job to do. They don't care about my electric bill, because that's only one of 100,000 other electric bills, right? The people you need to work with you are standing right there next to you. They know where you're at, physically, emotionally, mentally. They have walked in your shoes. And that's why they're your guides. They have stood where you stand. That's why they're your guides. Do we honor their sacredness? Or do we think that somehow there has to be somebody bigger and better, otherwise we're not good enough? That we got to prove we're good enough. I remember I had taught a class one day, and there are times when you get into the connection of spirit that it's like a drug. It's just, you're so euphoric. You're not in your body, you're not in this world, and you're floating. And everybody was channeling somebody. This one had Mother Mary, this one was doing Archangel this one had Kuan Yin, this one had... And I said to my guides, because it was such a fabulous class, I said, if they ask me your name, what should I say? My angel piped up and she says, well, you can call me Claire. I said, Claire? She goes, yes, because I always come in clear as a bell.
Oh my God.
My lead guide said to me, April, be careful. When somebody is announcing their name, be careful. Because high souls move through this world in a whisper, not a shout. They're not screaming at you who they are. The higher I go in the spirit world, the more humble they are. But not humble in, oh, can I serve you? They humble in the fact that they come and say, are you ready for me? Are you ready for what I have to offer you? Because I'm going to tell you what I know. Doesn't mean they know everything. It's not that they're omnipotent and they know everywhere. You know, I have a problem with people when I talk to their spirit guides, when I talk to their family members. They think they're everywhere knowing everything. They aren't. They can check on things. They can know certain things. And they can tell you based on where you're at, what you're most likely going to do. But they can't tell you what to do. They can't tell you how to do it. They can make suggestions for you. Because this is your life, not theirs. This is your journey. And part of your sacredness is in our principle that you are personally responsible for your own happiness or unhappiness. But I find that a lot of people want a scapegoat. They want somebody to blame if their life isn't perfect and things don't work out the way they did. I personally believe that every single thing we walk through is a lesson for us to become more aware. It's not a torture test. How much can you bear? How much can you handle? It's how much are you going to allow yourself to be awake to the higher order of things, to the greater knowledge of things. Anger, fear, and resentment awaits on your soul. It doesn't mean that you have to be a Pollyanna and say, they hurt me, that's okay, I'll be nice. No. You have to have boundaries. You have to have limits. You have to have, and people need to know where those are. People need to know where those are. So I developed these rules for myself. My first rule, I don't get walked on unless I lay down. But if I lay down, somebody's going to mistake me for a rug. Second rule, I can't get crapped on, dumped on, unless I bend over. Because if I'm standing in my sacred self, can't happen. Can't happen. People won't think to try. They won't think to try. I do believe that Western philosophy feeds the ego. Eastern philosophy kills the ego. And I believe somewhere in the middle of that is truth. Somewhere in the middle of everything. I say this all the time. The Bible starts out in Genesis that God created light. Nowhere does it say God created darkness. Which means that God originally, in its origin of truth, was all that was in pure darkness. Created light, and in between the light and the dark, manifestation comes. Think about it. Close your eyes right now. Close your eyes. Do you see anything in this room? Now open your eyes. It is the blending of dark and light. It is the balancing of positive and negative. But we have to figure that out. I take two scales, they're not going to stay in balance all the time. No matter how many you try, how much you try, just a movement will throw those into a wobble. That's our life here. We wobble. So there's no imperfection as long as you're trying to figure out where balance is. But if you never move, you stagnate. If we keep everything. You know, I've started to come to the conclusion that you write a book while you're here. Now, in our minds, everybody wants this kumbaya book. Everybody's happy and everybody's joyful and everybody loves each other and everybody's good to each other. It might be a pretty boring book to read. So I'm starting to believe that people are creating books so that when they get to the other side, they're going, do you know what I did? Do you know what I went through? Boy, are you creative. I remember one time I was reading for somebody, and this angel was standing there, and this family member was doing this, and this family had this trauma, and this thing was going on here, and they started laughing. They said if they could only understand how creative they are. Creating yourself and your sacred selves, meaning being the calm in the storm. Knowing that we've got to work at learning where balance is. Not because you're here to be tortured by it. But you got to learn to be the drop of water in the middle of the ocean. You got to be the grain of sand that makes up that beach. Because you got to be part of everything, and yet you have to be an individual yourself. You need to know where you start and everybody else begins. You need to know where your energy is and their energy is. That's when you really discover your sacredness. That everybody is balancing those same scales. The only thing you have to ask, is it your drama? You're not here to balance anybody else's. You're here to discover your sacred self. And that means you have to learn what you don't want in order for you to truly know what you do want. What works for you and what doesn't. The guides you get are going to be somebody who's walked in your shoes. So if you're an intellectual sourpuss, you're not going to get a comedian for a guide. But if you like a good joke, I can promise you there's some funny ones that come from the other side. One of my favorites. Two waves swimming in the water, male, female. The male's trying to show off for the female, so he throws himself up in the air and he comes back down, trying to impress her. So he throws himself higher and comes back down. Finally, he throws himself way up in the air and he comes down and he goes, oh my God, we're going to die. She goes, what are you talking about? He goes, you don't understand, we're going to die. She goes, what are you talking about? He says, I just saw the seashore. We are going to slam into that seashore and we are going to die. She started to laugh. She goes, don't you know we're the ocean? Don't you know you're part of everything? It's just a journey. You're an eternal soul. Slow down. Work it out. Relax. Nobody's saying you have to get it all right now. Take it little by little. Be softer with yourself. You know, one of the things, there are two prayers I have every day. The first one, I ask for the heart of God that I can see people the way God sees them. The second is that I am fully aware and fully awake to the highest level and capable of this moment in Knowing what I believed at 10 isn't what I believed at 20. What I believed at 20 isn't what I believe now. I am learning and I am growing and I am becoming. And sometimes we have to forgive ourselves, not just other people. We have to forgive ourselves because we all struggle on some level, some way. Remembering your sacred self as the God in me honors the God in you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.